6, 7, 8, I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world. Lay the puzzle pieces out, find out what it's all about. Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Stop us where it's been trodden, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. With our hands and with our hearts, we can dance and make a start. Together we can change the world.
Good morning, everyone. We are live. Good morning from the bakers who are joining us.
Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help.
Good morning, Mrs. Howe. Mrs. Howe's loving the song.
Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world.
Hello, everyone from Imogen.
Change your mind and change your life.
Great to have you with us this morning, Imogen. We are live from the Prince of Wales School.
When we open up our eyes and we start to realize, together we can change the world. Change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Step out where it's been trodden, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world.
Good morning, Rosa. Good morning from Jessica at home. And hello, Joshua in the Kingdom of Wonder. Hello from Year 1 with Mr. McBean. We've got a big hi from Philippa at Maiden Castle Farm as well. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all back and live from the Prince of Wales Virtual School. It's Tuesday, the 2nd of June, 2020. And it's wonderful to see so many people here joining us, whether that is live in a school, watching in one of our kingdoms, or whether it's watching at home through our Facebook or YouTube channels. It's wonderful to see each and every single one of you joining us. We've got a good morning from Miss Brown, Miss Street, and the Exploration Kingdom this morning. And hello from the Discovery Kingdom. It's great to see that everyone's joining in. Good morning, everyone at school, and a special hello to Urshi in Mr. McBean's room. That's a message from home to you, Urshi. I hope you're having a great morning with Mr. McBean in your new kingdom. Also, we've got a Love the Song from the Hoskins. Great that you're enjoying that this morning. It's one of our favourites. And a big hello to everyone in Discovery Kingdom today. Thank you very much for joining us. We are very fortunate this morning because we are joined by a very special guest. We're joined this morning by Dr. Annabelle King. Good morning, Annabelle.
Hi.
Welcome to the Prince of Wales Virtual School. Welcome to our whole school assembly. Do you want to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm thrilled to be here. So yeah, I'm called Annabelle. I work at Dorset Council. You probably have all heard of the council. We do all sorts of things, from organising, I don't know, school buses, bin collection, new road building, all sorts. But we also do work to look after wildlife, and that's called ecology. And I lead the natural environment team, as you can see, hopefully, on the bottom of your screen. And that is the team that looks after ecology in Dorset. So we do absolutely all sorts of things. And I'm actually, I was going to say, weirdly, in this sort of little bit for your school, I thought actually I'd focus on something which I just love, and so it's a bit more personal. But I mean, if you wanted to, I could always come back and talk a bit more about what we do as a team on another date.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got some more people saying hello this morning. We've got good morning. Hope Flynn's having a wonderful day at school. Love from Alfie. Morning from Charlie and Mrs. Burgess. And Emma is saying hi, Annabelle.
Yeah, hi Emma. Yeah, Emma is
So,
my colleague at work. You mentioned this.
Excellent. Well, I've got some slides here that you've prepared, and thank you so much for that. So I'm going to click through and share those with us now. This is the first picture.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, well, so like I said, I lead the natural environment team at the council. There are 5 of us, so quite a small team. But anything you can think of to do with wildlife in Dorset, we get involved in. And that can be answering emails and phone calls. You know, someone might phone in and say, oh my goodness, I woke up this morning and I left the window open overnight and a bat has flown into my spare room. What do I do? And so we would say, call the local bat rescue centre and get them to come round, or, you know, leave all the windows open and hopefully it'll fly out again. Or we get phone calls about Japanese knotweed, which is like a big plant that grows on our road verges and was introduced to this country from Asia. And it kind of grows and takes over wherever it grows and stops our native plants from growing, and so can be quite harmful to habitats and wildlife. And you know, we do a lot of work to control that sort of thing. We also manage all our country parks. We, the council, not the natural environment team, but we, the natural environment team, get involved in sort of helping advise on management. So some of you might know Moores Valley Country Park, or Durlston, right down on the tip of Purbeck, or Avonheath Country Park, all those areas, or Thorncombe, just on the outskirts of Dorchester. That's another of our lovely sites. The first slide that I have put up here is none of those things. It is a bridge, and that's because some of the other work that we do is going out and doing surveys, and we do a lot of surveys of bridges and pipes going under roads and that sort of thing, which Emma Baker will know all about because that's her line of work. And the reason we need to do that is because if there's a bridge and it needs to be repaired, bridges are quite often good places for wildlife to live. So, Mr Spracklen, if you go forward onto the next slide. Great. Then, so this is the underneath of that bridge, and it shows the water running underneath, but it also shows all the bricks. And you can see that there are little holes between the bricks, and where the water is, there'll be pebbles and things like that where animals might live. If you go on to the next slide. Great. Hopefully you can all see that this is a picture of a patch of mud. But if you have a look really closely, you might see some things on the mud. And I just wondered if anyone wanted to have a guess at what they can see, because this is the kind of thing that we come across when we go out and do our surveys. We have to look at what we find and guess, I suppose, or, you know, use what signs we find to help us understand what wildlife might be using the area around the bridge. So, Mr Spracklen, you said we probably won't get any answers for a few seconds, will we? But
well, it'll be really interesting to see your responses to that question. I know we've got lots and lots of people joining us live, and lots of people saying hello as well. I can actually, I'm sat here in my office and I can hear the classrooms listening, so I can hear your voice resonating around as well. So we've got our first response here. Is it a leech?
Oh, that's a really good guess, actually. I would. It's not a leech, but the picture isn't great.
Someone else says a leech ?
Oh, it's not actually an animal. It's something produced by an animal. How about that? That's a bit more of a clue. It is the right size and shape as a leech, though. You're right.
Something that might have an aroma to it, perhaps.
Possibly, yes. If you go back a couple of slides, Mr Spracklen, to the first one showing the bridge. Yeah, that one. So yes, that the the first thing we do when we get on site is we have a look at the bridge, and you can tell a lot from just sort of standing and looking. And if it's a very new bridge and there aren't really any cracks or crevices, then you think, well, probably there's not a lot of wildlife there. But an old bridge like this, then the sort of thing we might be looking for would be maybe an otter might use the river and might have its holt, which is where it lives on the riverbank. You might also find things like crayfish, which are a bit like big prawns, and we actually have crayfish that are native to this country, and they live in some of the rivers in Dorset. So that's another thing that we might have to look out for.
We've got a few more guesses coming in now. We've got quite a few guesses. The first one, is it a slug? And then we've had, is it hedgehog poo?
Oh, you're on the right track.
Poo. Someone else saying, is it hedgehog poo? Someone else saying poo. Year one says, is it otter poo?
Oh, nice.
And the Wonder Kingdom, Mrs. Johnson's Wonder Kingdom, are saying hello, and I've said poo as well.
Oh, well, you're all on the right track. It is poo. It's not hedgehog poo, and it's not otter poo, actually. It's too small to be otter poo, and it's too small to be hedgehog poo. The thing that it could have been is water vole poo. Now, water voles are like a big mouse, and they live on the banks of our rivers. And if you're very lucky, if you go for a walk and you're very quiet, you might actually hear a sort of plopping sound when the water vole is sitting on the bank and it sees you coming, and it plops into the water and swims away. And they are really rare, although we're very lucky in Dorset that we have quite a lot of them. And because they're rare, we have to really look after them, and so we always check to see if there are water voles if we're going to do work to a bridge. And water vole poo looks quite like this, but when I look more closely at this poo, because I do have the best job, this actually turned out to be rat poo, because it's a bit longer and it's kind of pointy at the ends. And the way to tell if you found a water vole poo is that it looks like a tic tac. So if you are out walking along a riverbank and you see a little patch of poos, you can see there's an acorn cup next to the poo in this picture, so they're about that size. But if they are the size and shape of tic tacs and you've got a whole little sort of group of them all together, then that could be water vole poo. So perhaps something to have a look for next time you're out and about.
Excellent. What have you got?
Oh, yes. So this is a picture of me when I was, I think, probably about 8 or 9. Have changed a bit, and I put this in because I wondered if anyone could spot the wildlife in that picture, and this is really what I wanted to talk about today, because
I wonder if anyone can spot the wildlife there in that photograph. Do put a comment in the comment box. While you do that, we've had a few people saying hello. We've had hello from the Pyle family who are watching, who say hello to Mr. Spracklen and hello to Annabelle as well. We've also got a hello from David, Deputy Mayor of Dorchester. Welcome, David. Good to have you with us. Hello from Lily, who's joining us. And we've got a couple of questions, but I think I'll save those for a bit later on. Some questions, because I want to see if anyone can spot the wildlife in this picture. Oh, we've got the first person saying, "Is that a butterfly?" Mrs. Howe says.
Oh, yep. Yes, it is. It's yes, if you look closely, you can see I'm holding what was my favourite doll at the time in her little bonnet, and sitting on the doll is a marbled white butterfly. Yep, that's right. And that was the sort of thing that I used to get up to when I was a child. I used to always be trying to have a close look at butterflies and try and catch them in my hands if we were out for a walk. And a lot of this, I have to say, is down to my dad, who is a mad keen butterfly expert. And I have to thank him for most of the photos that I'm going to use in the rest of this presentation, because they've come from him, and probably my lifelong passion for butterflies has come from him as well. So if we move on, so from now on, I'm going to talk about butterflies. That's a good guess about the tiger moth, by the way, because that is quite similar. Okay, so I thought I'd start off with just some pictures of butterflies, and these are species butterflies that you might well see in your garden. So again, I thought there might be something a bit familiar. The first one, the white one, I'm sure you will all have seen in gardens or in parks or on walks at certain times of the year. They come in large varieties and small varieties, and very imaginatively they're called large white and small white butterflies. And they are the kind, if you grow vegetables, that you don't like at all, because they lay their eggs on your cabbages and on your Brussels sprout plants, and then the eggs hatch out, and they eat all of your cabbages. So they're really unpopular with gardeners, but they're still a lovely butterfly, I think. And we do grow vegetables, and they do eat our vegetables. We always let them have a few of them and then try and protect the rest. So that, yes, that's a picture of a large white butterfly. And interestingly, the caterpillars eat cabbages. Oh, have we gone on a slide?
So, there we go.
Sorry. So the caterpillars eat cabbages, and they are in that family where the cabbage plants and every other plant in that family store mustard oil in their leaves. And so as the caterpillars eat the leaves, the caterpillars start to store this mustard oil inside them. And that is actually a really horrible tasting toxic oil. And so the butterfly protects itself, because when the caterpillars are developing, and a bird might look at them and think, oh, that would be a really nice meal, well, if they actually eat one, they realize very quickly that they taste absolutely disgusting. And in fact, if any of you have been learning about World War I or World War II, you might know that they used mustard gas in the trenches as part of their kind of weaponry. And actually that mustard gas comes from the same mustard oil that these butterflies, the caterpillars, are eating. So you can see how horrible and toxic it is. So the next butterfly is a blue coloured butterfly, and there are lots of different blue butterflies, but again, this is one that you might see in your garden or in a park when you're out walking, and it's called the holly blue. And it is one of the first butterflies to appear in the year, and it actually has 2 times of year when you would see the butterfly flying around, and the first time is quite early in the spring, and the second time is later in the summer. And so the butterfly will come out in the spring and they'll mate, and then the female will look to lay eggs, and the first time they lay their eggs, they lay on holly, and they actually lay on the holly buds, and then the caterpillar comes out and starts eating, and then it pupates, and then it turns into a butterfly again. And the second time the butterfly lays its eggs in the year, it lays on ivy. So it's a very unusual butterfly. It has 2 different food plants depending on the time of year that it's laying its eggs. But it's a really pretty butterfly, and if you see a sort of silvery blue butterfly flying through your garden or when you're on a walk, then I bet you that is what it will be, a holly blue. All right, on to the next slide, please. So this one is 2 bigger butterflies, and again you might recognise the one on the left-hand side, because actually it's starting to appear in Dorset at the moment. This one is called a painted lady, and I think that's rather a beautiful name for a very beautiful butterfly. And although it's not that big, it's probably about, I don't know, about sort of 8 to 10 centimetres across. It is an amazing butterfly because it flies here every year from Africa. It's a migrant butterfly, and it has this amazing life cycle where it will spend the winter in Africa, and then when the winds start to blow up from the south in our spring, those butterflies start flying north, and they fly right up through Africa, through Spain, through France, across the Channel, and then they land on our coast in England. And some of them go right up north in this country as well, but a lot of them stay in Dorset, and that's starting to happen now. So this lovely warm weather that we've been getting has been ideal for them. And they arrive here, and then they lay their eggs. They often lay on thistle. So again, really common plant, and you might well see caterpillars on thistles when you're out and about. And in really good years, when you get loads of them arriving and then loads of them lay their eggs, you can get tens of thousands of painted ladies hatching later in the summer. And those years are actually called painted lady years, and they've been written about, you know, in books and in poetry because they're so special. So you never know, this year might be a painted lady year. We'll need to look out for them. The butterfly on the right hand side is a bit more exotic, and that is one that's found in the North American and South American continents, and that's called the Monarch. And the reason I put it on the same picture as the painted lady is because it's another migrant, but it actually flies even further. It lives in North America in the summer, And then in the winter it flies south, and it flies the whole way down through America, right down to Mexico. And again, they fly in tens of thousands, and then they fly back again the following year. So if you go on to the next slide. Brilliant. And that is actually a picture from my dad again, of a tree. And if you look closely, you can see that that tree is a kind of orangey brown, and that's because it is completely covered in monarch butterflies on their migration. So if they weren't there, that tree would be green, but the whole tree is a sort of orangey brown because it's covered in tens of thousands of butterflies. And it's a real thing in America. People go to see it every year. They go to see the migration. And you can tell that's why we've got this picture, because my dad went too. If you look at the next slide.
Wow.
And that one, again, that's just showing how many butterflies make this migration. That's just a picture looking up into the evening sky of all the butterflies coming in to roost on a tree. And there are thousands and thousands of them. And they're not that big, but they fly tens of thousands of miles. I do think it's amazing.
They migrate in groups, like in this
Yes.
picture. They go in large groups.
Yes, you can see them when they're flying, I think. I don't think it's like not like with starlings where you get like a sort of real mass of them flying, but where you've got this many roosting in a tree, when they all take off, you would see them all flying through the sky, and then when they stop to feed on nectar to give them energy, then yes, they would sort of cover all the flowers all around.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Great. Next slide, please. So going back to this country, butterflies that we might see in our gardens or when we're out on a walk, you might recognize these two. The one on the left is a peacock butterfly, and the one on the right, on all the purple flowers, is a small tortoiseshell butterfly. And these are two of our most colourful butterflies. And the peacock, you can see why it's called a peacock butterfly, because it's got these amazing eye spots on its wings, which are like the spots on a peacock's tail. So that one's very easy to identify when you see it. And I just wanted to show you a few pictures of the different stages in their life cycles, because it's really quite interesting. And again, when I was a little girl, every year we used to go out and we used to find peacock or small tortoiseshell eggs, and we used to bring them home and keep them in a jam jar on their food plant and let them hatch. And then feed them and watch them developing, and it was pretty amazing, and it's very easy to do. So it's something that you could do, in your own homes. I think schools probably do that sort of thing still these days. But yes, definitely worth doing. So if you go on to the next slide. So this, or these rather, because it's not one thing, these are lots and lots of butterfly eggs, and they are the eggs of the peacock and the small tortoiseshell butterflies. And these butterflies lay their eggs in big batches. They don't normally lay them together. This is really unusual, because here on the right hand side of the picture, you've got a whole load of eggs laid by a peacock butterfly, and then a small tortoiseshell has come along and thought, oh, that looks like a good spot, I'm going to lay all my eggs here as well. So you've got this egg batch with lots and lots of eggs from two different species. And you might recognize that the leaf that it's been laid on is a nettle leaf, which again is really common. So if you're out on a walk, you could take a pair of rubber gloves or a pair of gardening gloves, and if you pass a patch of nettles, just have a look under some of the leaves and see if you can find a batch of eggs. And if you do, then they might be peacock or small tortoiseshell eggs. Okay, next one, please. So this is looking at the eggs when they hatch. So you get lots and lots of little tiny caterpillars, and the first thing they do is spin loads of lovely silken web, and that helps them because they can hide underneath it, so they don't get eaten by birds, and also it gives them somewhere to sort of hide when they start eating. So you can see that web has been spun around a nettle leaf, and the caterpillars are all out on the surface, kind of basking in the sunshine, but then they'll all go in and they'll start eating the nettle leaf. And again, this time of year is ideal. If you're out on a walk and you're passing a patch of nettles and you see a web like that, then you have found the caterpillars of a peacock or a small tortoiseshell. Okay, next slide, please. So this is sort of skipping on a bit. So as the caterpillars get bigger, they turn well, these are the peacock caterpillars. Small tortoiseshell caterpillars are a bit more browny, but these peacock caterpillars turn the most amazing shiny black, covered in bristles. And they get bigger and bigger, and then eventually they need to pupate, which is to turn into a pupa, and then the new butterfly will hatch out of that. So at that point, they go off on a long march looking for the right place to pupate. And so again, if you're out and about, you might see a caterpillar crossing the path in front of you, or you might even see several caterpillars kind of walking along the ground, and you think, why is that caterpillar walking along the ground when it should be on a plant eating food? And it's because it's got big enough to pupate. And so if you do see a caterpillar on the path, you could actually lift it up and put it off to the side somewhere safe, so that it's got more chance to pupate. So these two pictures are the peacock caterpillar. The first thing it does, weirdly, is spin a little silk pad on the underneath of the branch, and then it hangs itself upside down in that strange shape. And they all know how to do it. I don't know how, but that is what they all do. And then you can see that the skin splits at the back of the head, and out of this caterpillar skin emerges the pupa. It is like magic. And the skin is starting to sort of shrink down towards the feet of the caterpillar where they're attached to the branch. So yeah, next picture, please. And then these two pictures just show, in the one on the left, you can see that the skin has now completely come off the pupa, and it's just there up the top. And the pupa, if you were looking at this on a video, you'd see the pupa was wriggling around madly, trying to get the skin to drop off because it doesn't want it to sit there and go moldy. And at the same time, that little tiny point at the top of the pupa has somehow managed to hook into the silk that it spun onto the branch. And if it doesn't manage that and it falls off, then that butterfly will never hatch because it won't be able to turn into a butterfly in the pupa. So it's a really key stage. And then the one on the right is the pupa when it's had a chance to sit there for a bit. And if you look very carefully at the pupa, you can see there's a sort of series of ridges on the right-hand side. And that's actually the body of the butterfly. And then on the left-hand side, it's kind of smoother. And that's actually the wings of the butterfly starting to form inside the pupa. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, the butterfly will hatch out.
Amazing.
This is another very common butterfly, one of my favourites, and we've had a few in our garden this year, which is always lovely. And it's called the orange tip, and you can see why from the picture. And it actually is another one that eats plants that have mustard oil in them. So in our garden, if it's going to lay anywhere, it'll lay on garlic mustard, which is like a weed, and we have plenty of weeds in our garden. But I always say to myself, well, that's fine because they're there for the butterflies. So it lays on the garlic mustard, and the caterpillars eat the garlic mustard leaves and then are full of this mustard oil again, which is a good defense against birds. So you've got the male butterfly on the left, which is lovely bright orange wingtips, and then the female on the right, who doesn't have the orange but has this lovely mottling under her wings. Okay, next one, please. So this is just showing, there you go, there's a picture of the garlic mustard. You might have some of these plants in your garden. We have got an awful lot of them. So the orange egg is that little orange dot on the top left-hand picture. And you can see how tiny it is because that is on one of the flowers of the garlic mustard plant. And when it's first laid, it's white, and then it turns bright orange. And then a few weeks later, out of it hatches this little orange caterpillar with hair all over it. And it really is tiny, but because it's orange, it's quite easy to see. And it starts eating, and it gets bigger and bigger. Next picture, please. And there you go. That's it after probably, I don't know, about 10 days. And actually that picture, if you look very carefully, can you see behind the caterpillar is like a sort of blacky grey thing on the plant stem. So this caterpillar has actually just shed its skin. So caterpillars do that just like snakes do when they get bigger. Their skin isn't stretchy. And so as they grow and get bigger, they can't stretch their skin to keep up with that. They have to actually shed their skin, and then inside they grow a new skin. So that caterpillar has just shed its old skin, which is sitting behind it, and it's looking all new and beautiful. And it's now gone green, which is much better camouflage for the plant that it's on. and they just sit along the seed pod of the plant, and they're quite difficult to see, but very beautiful when you do find them. Next one, please. So these are some pictures of the orange tip caterpillar pupating, just to sort of finish off with. And you can see that by this time the caterpillar's got quite a bit bigger, and it's been on its journey and found somewhere that it wants to pupate. I don't think anyone knows what makes a caterpillar decide is a good spot to pupate. Sometimes you might find them, inside an old shed on the ceiling. Orange tip pupae are very hard to find in the wild. So they obviously go and find somewhere that's very sort of private and out of the way. But they all do decide on somewhere eventually. This one's decided on a twig, and instead of hanging upside down, it's kind of propped itself up. So you can see it's spun this little silk pad where its feet are attached at the end. And then around its body, it's got a silk rope, which is called a girdle. You can see that in both those pictures. And it's sort of using that rope to keep itself attached upright to the twig, and it's curled over in that funny shape, and it sits there probably for 2 or 3 days, and you look at it and you think, what is it doing? Why isn't it doing anything? And inside, all this amazing, I always think of it as like soup inside the caterpillar, and it's kind of remaking itself into a pupa inside. And so all that's going on. And then when it's ready, in that second picture, you can see that, again, the skin behind the head is split open, and the top of the pupa is just coming out of the skin. And you can see this little sort of curled over pointy bit, and the skin is starting to make its way down its body. So if we go on to the next picture. So this is just more of the pupa emerging. So again, you can see the silk girdle is being pulled down as the caterpillar wriggles and wriggles and tries to get the skin off without falling off the twig. So in the first one, the skin is about halfway down. And then in the second picture, you can see the caterpillar skin is right down the bottom, and that's pretty much the whole pupa there. And the sort of little pointy bit at the top is starting to straighten up. Next picture, please. And then here we are, that's the end of the process. And this main picture is the crucial bit, because the caterpillar is just hanging by this silk girdle. And its tail isn't attached because it wriggles around and it tries to get rid of the old skin. And then it has to hook the very end pointy bit of the pupa onto the silk that's on the twig. And again, if it doesn't manage that and it falls off, then it'll never hatch out of the pupa. So it's real make or break time for that pupa. And you can see in the second picture that it has attached itself and the skin is still there, but I'm sure that will fall off pretty soon. And then next pictures. Here we go. So this is the final bit. So the skin's fallen off, the end of the pupa has attached to, that's called the cremaster, the bit at the end of the pupa is attached to the silken pad. The lovely silk girdle is still all right. And the last thing that happens is that inside the pupa, all that sort of caterpillar soup rearranges itself, and the pupa dries out and forms this amazing, it's like a thorn shape, which I think is really great camouflage, actually, because then that pupa will sit there for the rest of this year, right through the winter, all the way until next spring, and it turns brown, so it's even better camouflaged, and it just sits there right through the winter, through all the frosts, any snow if we have it, until it hatches the following spring. And if you look at that pupa again, you can see the bottom half is the butterfly's body, and then you can just see like the shape of small wings in the main bit, in the sort of widest bit. You can see the veins on them, and so you know that the top bit pointing away from the twig is where the butterfly's head is with its antennae. And then if you go on to the next picture, there it is. There is the final butterfly hatching out. So caterpillars that are in your gardens or on garlic mustard now and then pupating in the next few weeks, they will then sit there in their pupae right through the rest of this year, all the way until next spring, and then they'll hatch out and they'll be next spring's orange tips.
While you were talking, Annabelle, I was reminded that our reception children before half term were learning about the life cycle of butterflies as part of their virtual learning. So I know that we've got some experts joining us, and I remembered one piece of work in particular that I'll just share with you. This is from a boy called Alec. Alec, I'm not sure if you're watching, but Alec found these in his garden.
Ah.
And the work from school and the fact that he found some in his garden inspired him to create his own models that he used to consider the life cycle of the caterpillar and butterfly. And he made a little animation as well, or a little video I'll share with you now.
Look at that.
So Alex, 4 or 5 years old. So this is his work.
The eggs come first, and then the caterpillar eats the leaf, and then it turns into a chrysalis, and then the butterfly eats the nectar from the flower, and then it lays more eggs.
There we go. What do you think of that?
I think that's amazing, and I think I'm teaching you things you already know by the looks of it.
I just remembered that we had that, so I thought I'd say that.
And the caterpillar looked very much like the Hungry Caterpillar, which I seem to remember was one of our favourite books in this house for a while.
David says that was an excellent presentation. Thank you. He's off to another meeting in 5 minutes, but says thank you very much. The Piles asked the question, what is the fastest spider? Because I had one in my bedroom.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure if you've had that inquiry on the telephone before.
No,
well,
not sure I have.
That's something that we can look up, I think. The Goom family say there are lots of butterflies up in the school nature wildlife garden this year. We've got a beautiful wildlife garden here at the school, and we know that we get lots of wildlife up there. Orson says, I love the peacock butterfly. That's his favourite. Mrs. Howe was watching and says that she can remember doing exactly the same thing when she was young, which is obviously very recently, Mrs. Howe. Imogen knew what you were talking about when you were saying about the World War II using mustard gas. Got good morning from Sarah as well. I think we had a couple of questions a bit further up, so I'll see if I can find those. Imogen asked, do you ever, in your role, find very rare species?
Yes, actually, yes, we do. That I suppose that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, because very rare species tend to be protected by our wildlife law. So we have to be really careful as a council that we don't break the law when we're doing work, and that includes doing anything that might harm a protected species. So we do go out looking for rare species. Not so many. I wouldn't say I found so many rare butterflies, although in my spare time I might go looking for them. And in fact, I was up on Giant Hill last weekend, up at Cerne Abbas, because that's one of the sort of country's most famous sites for the marsh fritillary, which is a really lovely butterfly, part of a group of butterflies called fritillaries, and they have like little sort of orange and black dots all over their wings. And Giant Hill at Cerne Abbas is one of the best places to go looking for them. I didn't see any, but I will be back this weekend having another look. But through work, yeah, sometimes we find, looking at a bridge like that, we might find bats roosting underneath, and all bats are pretty rare, actually. Again, we've got lots in Dorset, but countrywide, they're really rare. So we're very lucky. We do occasionally, we might get to see a bat hanging up under a bridge or, something like that.
Excellent. Holly would like to ask, what is your favourite animal or wildlife?
That is a really difficult one. I think I quite like small things. So my favourite butterfly would be a blue butterfly called the small blue, which is really tiny. It's like really tiny, about the size of half a 1p piece. But I think my favourite animal overall would be the harvest mouse, which is again a really tiny mouse, which lives in these lovely ball-shaped nests traditionally in cornfields, and the Latin name of that mouse is Micromus minutus, which means the smallest tiny mouse. So it's a bit of a
wonderful. Annabelle, can I thank you so much for leading our assembly today? It's been wonderful to have you with us. We really appreciate you taking time to join us, and thank you everyone for watching live. For those joining us live, we'll be back tomorrow morning for Good Morning Pow at 9:30. We're really looking forward to seeing you then. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.